Hi. I haven't made a video in a few days, not since the anniversary post, and this is going to be a quick one. The other day I meant to include a letter that I wrote to myself several years ago, but I didn't have the energy to read it at the time. But I have it out, and I don't know, I kind of debated about whether or not I wanted to share it with everybody, but this was a letter that I wrote back when Steve and I were still a secret. So before I read it, I want to stress to his family, any of his daughters that might see this video, I'm not the same person that I was when I wrote this. I don't think I have to remind you guys that or clarify that, but I didn't want your feelings to be hurt if I say something that was from another time. So I hope that you won't think any differently of me for reading this. Like I said, I do these videos to, it helps me to get my feelings out by talking at the camera, and I'm having a rough time tonight. So I wanted to read this letter. I wrote it approximately 18 and a half years ago. We were still a secret during this time. Okay, so here goes. I'm not exactly sure when it was that I first suspected that I was gay. In some ways, I think back and wonder if I had always known. When I was in my mid-teens, I remember being attracted to a couple of guy friends of mine. There was even a teacher of mine that I had an attraction for a while. Along the way, I became very good friends with this girl, a grade below me. We were inseparable. She dated an older guy. She dated an older guy that she was so in love with, but still found time to be one of my best friends. Her name was Renee, and as far as girls go, she was the most beautiful girl that I had ever laid my eyes on. During my junior year of high school, her boyfriend was killed in a car accident. She was destroyed. None of us thought that she would ever come around, but in the middle of all this despair and confusion, our friendship somehow or another turned into love. With all of this going on, I had no time to think about my urges. I guess I kept telling myself that it was just a phase and I would grow out of it. I remember the first time I questioned my sexuality. I was about 13 years old. I don't remember what I was doing, but I think I must have been looking for something out in our shed. Then again, I was probably just snooping around in my parents' stuff. What kid doesn't? Seriously, what kid doesn't? I came across some of my sister's old stuff in a box. There was a lot of books, magazines, and in the middle of all this stuff, there was a 1986 Playgirl pinup calendar. I remember looking at the pictures of the models, but not being disgusted by them. I knew I was attracted to them. Yeah, there was a time when I was a little younger that me and a neighbor kid fooled around one time, but I didn't know what sex was, let alone gay or straight. Growing up, I listened to my parents argue their views over the subject over supper. I guess typical dinner conversation at our house. I'd hear them say things like, they should all burn in hell. That was the first time I think I ever feared God. I married Renee when I was 19, and despite what people say now that they know that I'm gay, I loved her with all my heart. I know she was the only one who could make me happy. I thought that my feelings would go away after I was married, and for a while they did. Renee and I didn't have the picture-perfect marriage. Who does? We had a really good first year, at least. In my eyes, we did. Rough, but good. I drank a lot. And Renee always felt she couldn't be with her friends, and in the middle of all this, I learned that my best friend had taken his own life. Andy. My drinking escalated. It got to the point where Renee couldn't help me anymore, and she was too frustrated to continue our marriage. It got to the point where neither one of us would come home at night. So we separated. During the separation, Renee found me one day. It had been weeks since we last spoke. She wanted to know if I would buy some alcohol for her, since she wasn't yet 21. As we were driving to the liquor store, she told me that she was attracted to women. Here's a tip for anyone who's going to tell a loved one they might be gay. Don't tell them while they're driving. I didn't know how to react. I guess I didn't act like most guys do when they hear something like that. I took it badly. I guess I thought somehow I had turned her that way or something. Since then she has been seeing an older guy, and we don't really talk about her bisexual feelings anymore. I started getting on the internet. I didn't know there were so many ads on the net for gay guys. I didn't think there was anybody in Southwest Kansas with the same kind of feelings that I was having. I have since come to the conclusion that there are more than anyone had ever thought. And this is so true. Oh, Lord. I remember I saw one ad for Dodge City. It was the only one I saw at the time. The ad went something like this. Age 44, married, with children, 5'10", 180 pounds, brown hair, looking for a good time with other men from the area, not into fats or femmes. I don't know why, but for some reason or another, I responded to this ad. The crazy thing about it is that I had previously met someone in person over the internet. It was a terrible experience, and I vowed that I would never do it again. So I emailed this guy back and forth a few times. I guess he felt comfortable with me enough to send me his work number. I worked up a little courage and called later that afternoon. He seemed very friendly on the phone. In fact, his voice reminded me of a cowboy, like from one of those old Western movies with John Wayne. He was very easy to talk to. We worked out a time to meet the following Saturday morning. My roommate was out of town that week, so it was no problem for him to come by my place. I was still drinking heavily then, so I was less nervous about meeting him. He knocked on my front door about 3:45 that morning. He came in and we shook hands, and I showed him to my room. He looked around at pictures I had hanging up on the walls, anything to avoid eye contact, of course. During conversation, I realized that I knew one of his daughters, and he realized that he worked with one of my best girlfriends at the time. It was awkward, but it also gave us something in common and gave us something to talk about. We did end up in bed together. Afterwards, I walked him to the door, and he gave me a hug goodbye. I asked him if this was a one-time thing or if I would be seeing him again. His response I'll never forget. He said, "That's totally up to you." After he left, I felt dirty. Not good. I took a shower after another. I think I slept for the rest of that day. I know I slept at my parents' house because I didn't want to sleep in my bedroom. I was so confused about what had gone on. He messaged me about a week later. To this day, I don't know why I did, but I met him again. We continued to see each other once or twice a week. During the time I would see him, I started to feel something I had never felt with anyone before in my entire life. I'm not even sure there's a word for it. Imagine combining the feelings of safety, security, and love all in one. I knew I was falling in love with this guy. I kept it to myself for a very long time. The visits became more frequent. It wasn't just sex, though. Most of the time we just sat and talked. He became a very good friend, my best friend. I remember he said, "I love you" first. And it scared me, but I had been thinking it for weeks, so I was relieved when he did. This guy and I have been through a lot this last year. Somehow or another, my ex-wife found out about the relationship and exploited it a little. People started talking. I was scared that my parents were going to hear about it from someone else, so my sister organized a time to tell them. I told them that I was bisexual. I felt like it sounded more normal. Since then, I've come to realize that I'm probably gay. I don't really care for labels, but if I have to describe myself to a stranger, that's the word I use to describe myself. I guess I wanted to be bisexual because I thought it was just more normal. With all this going on, I lost my job, a job that I was very good at and that I love very much. I have now relocated to a city about an hour from where I was. I'm starting a new job and getting settled. Everyone in my life has heard about myself and the older married man from Dodge City. Some even know his name. I guess I should be happy, but I'm not. I don't know if it's him being married that bothers me. All I know is that sometimes when I need him, he can't be there because he has this whole other life. I once asked him why he is the way he is, if he knew about himself before he was married. His response didn't surprise me. He said, "That's the thing you did. You grow up, you get married, you have a wife and a career and children." Because that's what I was supposed to do. I get jealous of this guy. I get jealous of his family. They get to spend so much time with him. I know I could never take him for granted. I guess that's what I'm struggling with today. I feel guilty all the time. Guilty that I'm hurting his family. Even though they don't have a clue and they have no idea who I am, I still feel like that sometimes. This morning I told him that I couldn't see him anymore. No matter how much I want to mean that, I don't think I can. He has been there for me through some really rough spots this last year, and God knows he's been scared enough to walk away, but he hasn't. I know he loves me, and I know I love him. And maybe our relationship isn't normal, but what relationship is. Normal's defined on majority. What the majority thinks is normal is declared normal. Well, I'm not a majority. I'm an individual. It has taken me a very long time to accept what and who I am. But then again, sorry, I'm not to let these papers fall. But then again, I discovered it a lot sooner than a lot of people. My lover and I have a lot to work out, and I have a lot of feelings to sort through, and I will sort through them. All we have is time. All the time in the world. I've learned more about the way the world really works this last year than many people do in their whole lives. And as my lover reads this, I let him read it, I want him to know 3 things. I love you, I miss you, and the most important thing, I will never ever question again. I'm not going anywhere. I'm forever. My life is just getting started. Who knows where I'll end up? One thing I know for sure, actually 2 things. I'm 21 years old, and I'm pretty sure I'm gay. That's the letter. So, anyway, the top of the letter, it's a few months after I wrote it. At the top of the letter, I wrote, "To myself when I'm older." I don't know what age I meant to read that. When I wrote that, it was basically to myself, to my older self. I don't know why, but the number 37 gets stuck in my head. So maybe I was meant to read it on my 37th birthday, but I've read it maybe once every other couple years. Actually, that was the first time I've read it in maybe 5, really, you guys. If I'm being honest with you and myself. I don't know why I don't pull it out more. It's kind of neat to see who I was then compared to who I am now. I'm not that kid anymore. I love Steve way more than I ever did back then. He was and always will be the center of my world. He gave my life purpose. He is my favorite part about being alive. I was so lucky, you guys. I was so lucky. And if any of his family watches this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that for my part in hurting you. It wasn't my intent, and it wasn't his either. I told Mara yesterday, today was Mara's birthday, if I could, I'd give my life to give him back to you. I would. In a heartbeat. I would do it. Unfortunately, I can't. It'd make it a lot easier if I could. But I'm having a hard night tonight, and I thought maybe if I read this to you, it might help. And I think it did a little bit, but I miss him so much. I don't think it's real still. It doesn't feel real a lot of time, and sometimes it feels really real. So, but I appreciate all of you listening, and I'm gonna continue to live my life in a way that honors him. So, thank you for that. Good night.